네, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed the presentation by Tang Won-sun. It was so interesting. But some of you might find my presentation quite boring. So I'm nervous and I'm worried. And I know that you just had lunch. So some of you might just doze off, but I'm going to keep it up. So I was here last year actually, so this is my second time to be here. And I played some of your creations, and well, I'm so honored to be here on the stage again this year. So I would like to thank the organizing committee of BIC 2022. Well, let me introduce myself briefly first. I am deeply in love with indie games, and I want to create indie games. So I am trying to accumulate more experiences in the field, and I do like to have some discussion on philosophical thoughts. And I'm writing some philosophical articles in relation to indie games, and I've been working in the mobile indie game industry for quite a lot of years. And I'm also in charge of game publishing, marketing, and I'm also trying to become a developer myself soon. So first, I was into pixel art. So I was in charge of game planning, producing, marketing, and publishing for Dota. So I have been working in that area for many years, and I will continue to work in this field in the future, forever actually, my life. So that's the brief introduction about myself, and the title of today's presentation is Changing Perception of Indie Games. This might be pretty unfamiliar to many of you, but let's begin. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. So why we are making indie games and what kind of criticisms we have for the indie game industry, and what are true values of indie games. So these are the topics that I'm going to talk about today. If you visit indie game communities online, or if you talk with pro gamers, you may know that it is really hard to define indie games. So in order to address this ambiguity, I would like to give you some ideas. And the reason I'm talking about this is that you, indie gamers or indie game developers, need to continue your journey unwavered. So I'm just going to give you some support by telling you all this. So you are indie game developers, and I thought I wanted to know why you are making indie games. Well, it is true that many of you want to make your own games, and you're making games because you don't like the games that you can find in the market. And you also want to make something that others can enjoy based on your ideas and experiences. That is probably the reason you're making indie games on your own. So many of you might be idealists, but also you can be realist. And to my mind, I think you are a true realist because you know what is fun, what is enjoyable, and games made by big labels or big studios do not reflect those kind of qualities that you enjoy. So you want to make some games reflecting your philosophy and you want to make others to enjoy the games that you make because you think they're fun. And idealists might just pursue ideal goal, but you are not. You want to make something real for the people and you want to make something tangible for gamers. So you are, to my mind, realists. And many big studios and companies tend to make inductive games. So they survey the market first and they apply objective ideas when making games. But I believe that when you are making games, you may have experienced some conflicts between your inner goals and external forces. I know it's hard to make indie games. And particularly if you have to work for big companies, you have to make games that you don't like. That's going to be really painful for developers. So that is probably why you left the company and started to make indie games on your own. So I believe that you are an absolute denial of inductive game theory, and you want to reduce the pains of making games that you don't want, and you are the people who want to find pleasure in the process of gaming development.
그리고 이제 그 인디 게임을 만드시는 분들을 좀 이렇게 비유를 하자면
And I believe that indie game developers are black swans. Well, this is somewhat philosophical, but I believe that your originality is there not because you're a genius, but because you are trying to break some rules and find the answers to problems. So you are a black swan, and many others discovered you because you are unique. Black swans can be seen ugly in the beginning. It can't fly, and it is smaller than others. But one day, black swan stands out because it's beautiful and it can fly so much better than other common white swans. So black swans are special. And many others will see you very highly. And we all know black swans are black. That is your originality. And that is your character. And that is how you break and prove the problem of induction.
결국 이런 블랙스완은 비주류죠. 주류가
So black swans are not mainstream. However, it stands out and the mainstream want the black swan because black swans are special. Black swans are the ones who make history.
그럼 제가 이제 생각하는 그 몇 가지 이제 그 단어들을 통해서
So there are some words that we hear a lot when it comes to the indie game industry. So let's talk about that. First, financial independence. Financial independence is a really important concept for the indie game industry. Sponsor, publishing, small cap, all these words are being talked and spoken a lot in the industry. Because some people think or say that indie games should not publish, or if a game receives more than 100 million won of investment, it no longer is an indie game. Well, with all that, some argue that games made by developers who get paid by an indie game company are not indie games. This makes no sense. So if you are working with a big company, you are not indie game developer. If you receive any financial support, you are not indie game developer. That is not true. I believe that financial independence needs to be understood with this. I believe that financial independence can be attained when we deny the power of the big market or the mainstream market. Instead of relying too much on the mainstream market, if you make your own pleasure through games that are indie games. And with that in mind, you are indie game developer with financial independence. And some people might think that indie games are arts. So if you pursue art, you should not want money. These kind of statements are pretty forceful and put a lot of burden for indie gamers. But I believe that indie games are a must for our society, just like philosophy. Because big game titles made by big companies just follow the trends. However, indie game developers do not want to follow the trend. You are making your own rules. You are rule breakers. And one more thing. Socrates said,
그 말을 뛰게 하고 계속해서 어떤
on his very last day, horses should not get fat because it's going to make horses lazy. So if that's a one strong idea, you have to push yourself to, like a horse, to create your own rules and trends. And another word that we hear a lot in the indie game scene is differentiation. But I think that we all have different understanding in this. So does it mean that your games need to be different from other games? I think that's what most people think. Well, if you look up the dictionary, differentiation means having different groups. So based on those grades, you can argue that your games are better than others. Well, I think that this is a somewhat hierarchical concept. So you are putting something on top of something. You are applying different grades or stratification or classes. However, I think that the concept of differentiation is just from the perspective of marketing. If you think about the fundamental pleasure of playing a game, it doesn't really have a big impact. So I think that indie games will develop and grow further when we focus more on diversity than differentiation. We need diverse ages, diverse people, and diverse background. So if we have more indie game developers, the indie game market will grow and it will be more interesting. So finding more diversity is the future of the indie game industry. So we want pure pleasure and we want to share the pleasure and enjoyment of playing game with more and more people. That is the objective of making and playing indie games. And the next word that I'm going to talk about is novelty. We always talk about novelty. Something new, something novel. We believe that that's a really important concept for indie games. And when we started to have mobile open market, we started to see a lot of free games that users can easily download. And these games started to make money through in-app purchases and other functions in the app. So gamers started to have very diverse experiences with these kind of games. And with the introduction of YouTube and Twitch, many could see others playing a game. So you don't really have to play the game on your own. Just by watching others playing, you could understand the game. And with this trend, people started to share what I call objective experience. So we began losing novelty. And I believe actually people spend more money on familiar games instead of novel games. But at the same time, we still highly value the purity or novelty of games, particularly when they are indie games. So I believe that indie game developers are kind of forced to pursue novelty. However, I think you don't have to be obsessed with novelty, because I believe that this is some kind of coercive concept. It is a forced sense of solidarity. So instead of going for pure novelty or 100% original content, I think you have to apply different approaches. Because I believe that novelty is coming not from something totally unfamiliar, but from something familiar. When you can find something unfamiliar out of familiar things, that is novel. Finding something new is what we want. Well, that is not an easy goal, but I think that you have to go and show your bare skin if you want to create some novel content. We have to shake off the mask that causes delusional novelty. Well, criticism is not a bad thing. We need more discussions and criticism for the indie game industry. When you make something new, when you make content, but when you still have to get paid to make a living, well, the situation is not so good, because if you have to work for a company to make money, you can't really pursue your own happiness. So instead of being a subordinate to your boss, you all wanted to be on your own. You wanted to be an independent worker. That is why you are developing an indie game, and I agree with your idea, your value. So what are the values of indie games? I believe there are inner values and external values.
우선 올해 초에 제가 인디게임 개발자 간담회를
Earlier this year, I had a meeting with the indie game developers, and I was speaker there too. And there I said,
좀 활성화하려면 어떻게
in
해야
order
되냐
to
라는 주제로 이제 많은
expand the indie game market,
정치하신 국회의원분들하고도
well, there we had a lot of lawmakers and policymakers and business people, and there
인재를
those people
육성하고
said that
게임을
we
만드는
need human
기술자들을
talents,
양성해서
we need technicians, game developers,
개발사에 입사를 시키고
so that they can work
이런
or
말씀을
make indie game companies. Well, that was
근데
their
저는
idea.
좀 그 부분에서는 이게
However,
생각을 했었어요.
I didn't
비유를 해보자면
agree with them.
국가 이제 정책 중에 요즘에 이제 좀 출산율도 많이 떨어지고
Well, for example, national policies are being designed and implemented to improve birth rates. And when they're making the policy, they research all the birth rates and they try to find the reason and they are trying to make some solutions,
개인이 행복하지 않기 때문에
particularly
내가 행복해야
for handling house chores and all.
부부가
But I
행복해야
believe that the reason people stop
행복한 세상에
giving birth
세상을
is that they are not happy. If they're happy, if people are happy in marriage and if people are happy with their work and all, they will make more babies because they want their babies to enjoy that happiness in their life too. But if you look
결국 우리는 지금
at
불행하다는
the things in our society, we know that we have high suicide rates, a lot of stressed people.
개인의 행복을
So maybe people aren't happy in Korea. Well, I believe that the true value of indie game is pursuit of happiness. Developers are happy when they're making games. That is the true value of indie games.
내적 가치에 대해서 이제 한번 얘기를 해볼 텐데요. 되게 유명한 문구죠.
So let's talk about the inner value of indie games. Well, this is a very famous line from Little Prince. Do not teach them how to build a ship, teach them yarn for the endless and vast sea. This is a really good line. So I believe that the government should not make policies to make game developers. They have to find a way to make people happy. So if people are happy when they make and play games, will want to be they will want to become an indie game developer. So that is how to nurture the industry. That is how to nurture talent.
나중에 그 친구들이 이 게임 업계에 종사할 수 있게 되는 그런 형태가
So and if they make good games and if they succeed, more and more people will join the move.
행복 추구라고
So I personally believe that the most important value of indie game is pursuit of happiness, particularly developers' pursuit of happiness. And next is external values.
인디 아포칼립스라는 단어가 있었어요.
Few years ago, many talked about indie apocalypse
적인 걸로 포장이 돼서 결국 다양성을 상실하고
because people thought that indie games lost the true value. The term indie became a marketing term or marketing tactic. So many thought that that was the end to the indie game industry. However, that was not true.
생명체 지구상에 살고 있는 생명체의 한 70%가 멸종하는
In fact, the planet Earth had about 5 times of close to extinction. If we lose more than 70% of all species on Earth, we say that we are close to the end. And the planet Earth went through 5 of them. The most well-known example is the extinction of dinosaur. Dinosaur went extinct because there were not enough resources for them, and with the extinction of dinosaur, other species on the planet flourished. They ate and consumed more resources, and they reproduced greatly, increasing and expanding their world. So dinosaurs went extinct because they couldn't find enough resources to support their big body. And that can apply to the game industry as well. If anything has to go extinct, I think it's big companies, big games. Indie games will survive. And one of the risks that we all have, particularly the big game studios have, is the self-reproduction. Look at Lineage and similar games. All of those games rely on in-app purchase, and they need more and more spending from users in the app. But if they rely on that, and if they fall into the cycle of self-reproduction, they will go extinct. Well, it is true that some of your creation will fail. You may not make money. However, if you can continue to break rules, that is good enough. So no rules. I believe that this is a really important concept that we all have to bear in mind as indie game developer. Genova Chen, a really famous game developer, always said that indie games are like a pirate ship. When pirate ships go to the sea, they have to take on a lot of challenges. Only by doing that, they can find precious things in the sea. So it's not easy, but we continue to make and break the rules. And I do have these kind of opportunities from time to time. So I speak and I also write as well. So I am a branch writer as well. And I know many indie game developers have a lot of difficulties. And sometimes if you release your product, others will simply say that you are a copycat. So I know that you do have a lot of inner and external conflicts. I want to give you a hand. I want to help you. And I hope that the indie game industry will grow further. And I hope your creation will be loved by global fans as well. And I love indie games myself too. So I am very grateful for all of you, and I thank all of you for your great efforts. And I would like to end my presentation with a very famous line from the oldest Buddhist Bible. Act alone and don't get lazy. Do not be wavered by criticism nor praise. Not startled at sound like a lion, not snared like the wind in a net, not smeared like a lotus in water. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Thank you for listening.